The recipient of the 2017 Randolph-Caldecott Medal for the Most Distinguished Picture Book for Children is Javaka Steptoe for Radiant Child, the story of young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. Illustrated and written by Javaka Steptoe. Published by Little Brown Books for Young Readers, a division of Hachette Book Group. Like Jean-Michel Basquiat's work, Javaka Steptoe's illustrations radiate energy and immediacy. A patchworked canvas of scavenged wood, painted and collaged with photos and images of human anatomy, evokes the improvisatory nature of Basquiat's art. Radiant Child resonates with emotion that connects Javaka Steptoe with Basquiat and Basquiat with young readers, making the artist approachable and relatable to children on a variety of levels. Javaka Steptoe, on behalf of the 2017 Caldecott Committee, it is a privilege to recognize you and your achievement and to present you with the Randolph-Caldecott Medal for Radiant Child, the story of young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat.
It says at the top of my speech, this is 6 minutes and 18 seconds. So we'll see what happens. A Genius Child by Langston Hughes. This is a song for a genius child. Sing it softly, for the song is wild. Sing it softly, for the song is wild. Sing it softly as ever you can, lest the song gets out of hand. Nobody loves a genius child. Can you love an eagle, tame or wild? Wild or tame? Can you love a monster of frightening name? Nobody loves a genius child. Kill him and let his soul run wild. This poem was read at Jean-Michel Basquiat's memorial service by his friend Freddie Brathwaite, also known as Fab Five Freddy, host of Yo MTV Raps. It sums up the love-hate relationship many of us have with bringers of change. Our connections with revolutionaries are often uncomfortable and hard to deal with, and are often filled with abuse and struggles for power in an attempt to maintain the status quo. But when their job is done, we celebrate their lives as if we were behind them all the way. Imagine what would happen if we were really behind them all the way. 12 years ago, I decided to write a book about Jean-Michel Basquiat. I was at the Brooklyn Museum in 2005 at the Basquiat exhibit, standing in front of a piece called The Jawbone of an Ass. The title referenced the act of a biblical hero, Samson, chopping down 1,000 Philistines, a perennial enemy of the Jewish people, with the jawbone of a donkey. The painting itself has an untraditional frame made of 4 slats of wood tied at the corners with a string. The canvas is draped over the frames, and its surface is separated into 3 sections reminiscent of the Holy Trinity by a large yellow rectangular area in the middle. This yellow area is filled with names that allude to historic struggles for power and agency. Names of those considered heroes are given crowns by Basquiat. In the upper left is a drawing of a black man from the waist up. Above him, written the words thinker. Beneath him, painted a blue crown. All the way to the right, a jumble of cartoon line drawings depicts conflict. A policeman welding a jawbone, snakes and bombs, and two boxers, one white, one black, slugging it out. My description does not do the actual artwork justice. But what struck me about this piece of artwork, was Basquiat's use of history, how he tied the past and the present together with clarity. It was immediate, straightforward, yet complex. That would be my first time standing in front of a work of his, really studying it, really seeing Basquiat. This experience, as well as the excitement surrounding the exhibit of his work, led to a fleeting thought. It would be really cool if I did a children's book around him. The idea lay dormant for 5 years until 2010, when Radiant Child, a documentary by filmmaker Tamara Davis, brought it back to the forefront of my mind. Reinvigorated, I began searching his life and was able to find what I call the meat of the story. The juicy, mouth-watering piece that you can't do without. It's what your mind sinks its teeth into, what holds the story together. Sorry, vegetarians. For me, the meat was this Basquiat quote. I say my mother gave me the primary things. The artwork comes from her. These words let me know that I was going to create a story about the love between a mother and her son. As I began to learn about Basquiat's life, I found that our lives have many parallels. Living in Brooklyn, hanging out in the village, creating art, and mental illness. I learned that his life was rich with experiences and subject matters relevant to today's youth and families, such as drug addiction, immigration, poetry, art activism, or what we call artivism, racism, hip-hop culture, and graffiti. I also found that while there was a great love for his work, people were often conflicted about giving him credit for his genius. There was a comfort in the narrative that he was a poor, uneducated wild child from the streets, that his artistry was not worthy of being discussed because it was a fluke, and that his imagery came from drug addiction or mental illness delusions. The truth is that Basquiat was raised in a two-parent home, which they owned until his mother became sick. He spoke 3 languages and went to private and public schools. His father owned several businesses before becoming an accountant at Penguin. And he frequently played tennis on the weekend. The development of Basquiat's style began as a child and continued to develop into his adulthood. There are no first-hand accounts showing that his art was a product of drugs or mental illness. And as a side note, no one ever mentioned that there was also a highly prevalent drug culture in America. So it was not like he was the only one. And also, this drug culture during the 80s was enabled by government policy. Oh, sorry. The truth is that you cannot discuss modern art without Basquiat. Art was his breath. It was his act of love, and he touched people deeply. This is not to say that he had no problems or angst, but there has been a double standard in the telling of his story. It saddens and angers me to think how many young artists of color have discovered Jean-Michel Basquiat, have been moved by his work, only to be told he was a lucky drug addict at the right place at the right time. This type of character lynching is not something of the past. I have personally experienced the rewriting of my history by a journalist article filled with blatant lies, focused more on himself and his comfort level of what he thought I was than rather who I was or am. We have come a long way, but black and brown bodies are still facing the repercussions of full frontal and systematic racism, sometimes with their lives. We still have far to go. So why write a book about such a controversial figure? Because we live in a complicated world, and children's books can open up spaces for young people to learn lessons that help prepare them for their future. Children's books are safe containers to discuss any number of difficult topics with their caretakers or loved ones. They create opportunities for children seeking understanding and solutions for real-life situations, to know that they're not alone and to speak their truth. They open spaces for children to develop empathy and understanding and to feel pride in their culture, heritage, and experiences. Jean-Michel Basquiat's story teaches children and all of us that life has struggles, many that we can do nothing about, but we also have power in how we face them. And most important, it teaches us that we all have value. Thank you. The job of a child is to learn as much as possible about the world through new eyes that cast no judgment. It is not that they can not handle inconvenient truths. It is we as adults who shy away from controversial topics and feel uncomfortable and even ashamed. When we tell lies or omit truths about life to children, they are filled with unrealistic expectations of the world. We create angry adults that do terrible things to themselves and others, and the truth creates peace. Just as a side note, whenever I go to schools, my number one rule is anything can happen. So you just have to flow with it. My father wrote as a way to heal himself and to value others, and now I do the same. Sloppy, ugly, and sometimes weird is a metaphor for our lives, our struggles, and the value that we all hold. While a life may be of no interest at first glance, on closer inspection, there is always more to learn, more lessons to take note of. When we pay attention to others, we pay attention to ourselves. When we find beauty in others, we find beauty in ourselves. By being a witness to the sloppy, ugly, but somehow still beautiful beings around us, we learn who we really are, We are not the sum of our faults or our strengths. Those are transitory things. We are each doing the best we can with the tools we have been given against the challenges that we face. We all desire love and happiness, and we all are deserving. How we treat one another is what distinguishes us. I keep doing that. So let us speak truth at all times, even when it is difficult or it is painful, so that we do not fill our children's bags with the weight of what we carry. Fighting racism, sexism, classism, poverty, and any of the other woes of humanity is like fighting hunger. It is not satiated with one meal. It is not solved by giving a man a fish. It is everyday work that we must teach people how to do. We cannot be satisfied with one victory and think that the battle is over. Until the struggle becomes indistinguishable from the way we live our lives, these pestilences will always be plagues. Committee members, publishing companies, everyone listening or reading this speech, I ask that we all keep fighting and that we take this attitude with us into our day-to-day business. Please do not feel overwhelmed. We can all pick an individual focus, and in this way, everything will be accomplished. You will become better, and we will become better. I would like to thank Jean-Michel Basquiat, my agent Edward Neckerslummer, Cindy Egan, Connie Sue, Deirdre Jones, Saho Fuji, Jen Keenan, Phil Cominetti, Annie McDowell, Erica Schwartz, Cericia Fennell, Victoria Stapleton, Jenny Choi, Megan Tingley, everyone at Little Brown for Young Readers for being supportive and preparing a space for me to sit and focus and work. My girlfriend Azure, Dr. Trina Lynn Yearwood, my mother, father, and family members, and a host of other friends and family members who have supported me in my life and on this project through your words and through getting to work in the studio painting blocks for me. I would also like to thank Leo and Diane Dillon. Jerry Pinkney, my father, John Steptoe, Jerry Pinkney and Leo and Diane Dillon were the only other African American people to receive the Caldecott Award before me. And there are a host of other African Americans that have received Caldecott honors. And I just want to take a moment to think about that. In my heart, and because of the history of this country, there are times that we've had to face racism. And the silver medals that were received by African Americans, in my heart, those are gold medals. It is on their shoulders I stand, and I would lastly like to thank the 2017 Caldecott Committee for seeing the value in this story and for honoring me with such a distinguished award. Thank you.